Okay, so this is something that I have written about before, posted about, had conversations about on the internet, and it keeps getting deleted every time I go back to try to look at it and can't find it, and it's never there. So it's being hidden somewhere, or the comments are just getting deleted, which has been a really common occurrence across the entire internet for me lately. Doesn't matter if it's on what social media it's on, including I just went on Reddit for the very first time and got stuff deleted right away. Now, in part, it's because of all these changes in guidelines or rules or whatever, I'm sure. I'm old school, so I'm used to just being able to talk about whatever you want, and as long as it's not innately offensive, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to talk about it. But apparently that's not how the internet works anymore. So we'll see how this goes, because it just got me talking about this just got deleted recently, and I decided to make a video, and I guess we'll find out if that stays up or not. Only a couple people ever watch my videos anyways, but if for whatever reason more people ended up seeing my stuff, great, I appreciate the conversation, but we'll see how the moderators on the internet like it. It's funny to me that stuff like this would get deleted when certain other stuff won't. I'm not sitting here saying that because these things get deleted that they're totally factual, that it's some conspiracy going on. I am going to be talking about a conspiracy. But I'm not saying that that's why these things are getting deleted per se, as much as it's there's a way that I'm communicating things that is just getting marked as not acceptable. So I guess any sort of commentary would be helpful so that I can know how to go about talking about these things. I think more or less, okay, we'll just get into it. So I have this theory of everything that I've been, creating, building off of for years. It started with me just being weirdly paranoid as a kid about the things that I was learning. I learned a lot of occult, a lot about the occult and about conspiracies and about the nature of those things in our world today, the prevalence of witchcraft in American and modern society, and not just like witchcraft, like a very specific type of brainwashing, a very specific type of energy manipulation, a very specific type of manifestation tactics being used to destiny swap, essentially, right? On a large scale, okay? So a lot of the stuff I share might be personal, but this is also about a large scale of something that's happening, worldwide. When I was little, I started learning about the occult when I was about 8. And between 8 and about 19 was when I was learning them. I can't even say that. Because even now I'm still learning. From the time I was 8, I started learning about the occult, and I started learning about I want to say learning about witchcraft, but when I say that, it has this, it sounds differently than what I actually mean. My brother started practicing witchcraft and using me as kind of a muse and a mark, and was not really, he was just trying to be edgy, he was trying to get into dark stuff, him and his friend had found themselves, interested in those things. His friend had, brought those things to him, and then he started engaging with it and messing around with it. And I was kind of just like an innocent bystander to it, more or less. But I was, because I was his younger sister and I was young, so like, as innocent, I didn't really understand anything, and I was like an easy target, right? So that's how it all started, which is something I was reflecting on today, but I guess I can get into that later, or not at all, right now, at least. But yeah, and he, so I was aware of different things that were going on, but I didn't really understand them. And as I got older, I didn't really put things into the perspective of witchcraft, even though, like, I remember my parents, him getting in trouble over stuff that my parents had found, and over, like, like, I don't think they had even found, like, a lot of the stuff he was actually engaged with necessarily, at least until later. But, like, even, like, the music and stuff that he was finding himself interested in and different stuff like that. Like, I mean, we grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian home. So there was a lot. And he was always, like, the rebellious one. He was always the black sheep in our family, right? Which is a funny concept because it goes through my head all the time. He had written a song. He was a musician. And he had written this song called, well, I don't remember what it was called, but in it, he has a line that says, "Who's the black sheep if I ain't the black sheep?" And it's funny only because he kind of made himself the black sheep by being so rebellious. When in reality, and like how we look at it now as adults, like he could even admit that like I was actually the one constantly being ostracized by the entire family. I was the one put out of the sheepfold. I was the one like preyed on out of the entire family, up until my little cousin was born. She's fucked up now. I got out of it. And like my oldest cousin, she's 11 years older than me. My little cousin's like 11, 12 years younger than me. And my older cousin was first, but then when I was born, like I took it on, and it just got heavier and heavier to the point where once I got out of it, my cousin was the one, and she got fucked up on it, and she's still fucked up on it. But also because she plays with it, she gives into it. She got into drugs. She got into the sex. Like, we all did our own different forms of dabbling with different things, but she got real caught up real quick, real young, and she was more fucked up. She was more fucked up. Her mother wound was deeper, different, more obvious than mine, where her father wound was much more subtle, and I think to a degree, not to the family really, but like we always kind of knew that she was going to be fucked up, to be honest. My uncle was always fucked up, so like as soon as he had a kid we were like, oh my god. And when she was a girl, it was like, that poor thing. And it's a shame that that's the way that my family viewed it. Like, I tried to be there for her at different times, but like, and I think other family members did in different ways, but like, there was already a powerful force at play in my family. Okay, this isn't even supposed to be about my family, but that's when I've had a lot of personal experience with a lot of different types of things, right? And I grew up Christian. So that's where my education comes from, generally, is from my past experience, from my childhood, from growing up in Christian churches. Okay. This wasn't supposed to be about me personally, but apparently it's going to come back around later, so I need to get that out. So I have this theory of everything, right? I would call it a matrix theory, even though it goes well beyond the actual matrix in which we live. It's weird because I've been creating this theory. I like I said, I'm going to attempt to write it down in a book, but that's going to cause a whole bunch of different other stuff. So like just getting it out in little bits and pieces seems to be helpful, or has been, except that my stuff keeps getting deleted. So, but I've been doing this over time, and I've been doing this through my personal experiences, and I've been doing it through my own education, and like, I'm fucking nobody. I have no degrees. Like, you know, this is just the layman's opinion of, this is a layman's theory of everything, okay? That is like first and foremost the thing I always try to preface all of my opinions with, is that like, take it with a grain of salt. Take it for what it's worth. Not even with a grain, but yeah. I mean, that's like a witchy thing to say, but my mom used to always say it, and it's true, like, to a degree, like, take it for what it's worth. Take it for what it's worth, you know, but, and again, like, I'd love to hear other people's opinions about these such things, but I have this theory of everything, which I was calling it prior to realizing that that was already a thing. Apparently, that's what fucking Stephen Hawking was doing, was coming up with a theory of everything. Apparently, this is like a normal thing for, I was going to say like narcissistic geniuses, but I wouldn't consider myself that. A bit narcissistic, sure, but I don't think I'm a genius. I think I'm that's why I premise everything with like, no, I'm like the most basic bitch. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. If I can contrive certain things, it's possible anywhere. I'm not like, I don't have some crazy IQ. I don't like, I mean, I understand things. I can process things. I can process a lot all at once. I do think that I specifically, in my own reality at least, like, because I haven't met anybody else quite like me in this way. That's not to say that there isn't other people like me. There's fucking billions or millions of people on the planet. Billions? I don't even know how many people there are anymore. When I was growing up, it used to be easier to calculate. People are just, there's so many people on this planet apparently. And I don't even trust the numbers always, but there's a lot of people that exist, and I don't think I'm alone in my concepts, in my experiences, in my capacities. I think, you know, me being 1 in a million is even a stretch, because I haven't met a million people in my life yet. I've met thousands of people. I've probably interacted, come in contact with, and when I say I'm not like anybody else I've ever met, I'm referring to probably like maybe 100,000 people, okay? So who's to say that I won't meet somebody just like this tomorrow? I don't know. That's why I like putting things on the internet as well, because there's a further reach in order to engage with people that do have these different, and I've met people like me, just this specific thing, and just with my specific work that I do, my specific, you know, internal work that I'm doing. I haven't met anybody that's doing the exact same thing. I don't feel like I feel like most of my coworkers are all like dead people, other people in other dimensions, entities and energies in other dimensions, okay? Just like, okay, I'll get into it. I feel like I have to preface all this, but I just have ADHD more than anything, so I don't know how to communicate these things properly. Okay, so the comment that got deleted specifically, I'll start there and then see where that goes, was in reference to the Bible, which I was raised on, and was in reference to something that I've been talking about a lot lately. I find myself online having these communications a lot lately about like the nature of Christianity and the nature of our place in the world and how it interacts with Christianity and like where Christianity comes into play in those ways and why so many people fall for it, especially nowadays, because like what we're seeing right now in, you know, the world today, in the modern world today, seems to be is like a revival of Christian ideologies. And I was told when I was growing up that this would happen. But sometimes it was referred to as a great falling away, and sometimes it was referred to as a great revival. They were always referred to in tandem, and the concept was that at the same, essentially like people will be given to their own sins and their own darkness and their own lack of God, and then people will rise up and realize the one true God. And all of those that are called by the one true God will come to them, and all of those that aren't called are going to be separated from them. From the wheat being separated from the chaff, the sheep being separated from the goats. Those that are savory and satisfactory to God will be taken into the fold of God, and those that aren't will be cast away. And then that's what we see happening right now. That's already a lot. That's already so deep. But like, this is all just my personal opinion, of course. What is happening? Okay, this is just like, these are all just theories I came up with. I will try to make a point to state when I know something to be factual. Otherwise, you can assume it's just a theory I came up with. It's just my opinion. It's safer that way. And feel free to, search up whatever you want to search up and correct me and stuff as much as possible. Be helpful. This has been going on in my head for most of my life, so, since I've been learning about stuff, but, and because I was raised in the church, so I was taught to look for these things. And I have been vigilant. So it's a weird thing, because what we see right now is this uprising in Christian ideologies, right? But the forerunners for that, like, especially like here in America, okay, what I see is that like a whole bunch of like conservative concepts, especially politically, are being accepted and driven forward by people who are equally accepting Christian values. And it's a weird thing to see, because I'm not a Christian, and because the people that are claiming this Christianity and claiming this conservatism and then promoting it, and all these people following them are people like Trump, people like what's his name, Russell Brand, people like Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. I guess for a minute they were. I don't know where they stand on that right now, but I'm not always involved with popular stuff that way. But people like that, people like, I don't think Alex Jones claims to be a Christian. I don't know where he's at with those things, but like a lot of these concepts are subversively being taught through that specific vein, like the Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, meathead, weird little vein that's going on, where like all of a sudden all these people are Christian conservatives, traditionalists. What I really want is to go build a cabin out in the woods, but like these people don't actually have any true personal concept of sustainability that they're applying. They just found, it's like Trump, the word Trump itself, they just found a way to trump the liberalism in the world today, which I don't agree with either, to be clear. I'm not a liberal nor a conservative. I consider myself conservative because I care about sustainability, and I consider myself liberal because I care about progress, but I do not define those things the way that they are defined through those political, groups or whatever. The way that these things are being pushed in media, communicated through media, is wild. wild, nothing but absolute brainwashing, and people are just so given to it. And, I was talking to somebody recently who was the way that they had put it, and I would say that must be what it is. I grew up in a Christian home. They grew up in an atheist home. And their concept was that, like, having grown up without religion has left them with this desire for that concept of something deeper and for a relationship with something greater than themselves, because they were never given that structure. And so now as an adult, they are seeking that structure. And I do think that's where most of this culture, this society is at. I think that that's the reason that Christian conservatism is on the rise. It's because people are desperate for a structured sense of personal spiritual discipline, that they have no other concept of outside of Christian conservatism. And I think that when you have people when you have as big of players in the game as people like Trump pushing those concepts, it's easy for people to give into that. And suddenly people that would have never in a million years ever voted for somebody like that are like, well, I think that's who I'm going to vote for. And this is what I stand for now. And this is what I believe in. And it's brainwashing. It is absolutely brainwashing at its peak. It's not even at its peak, but it's like they figured out how to get this to work, and it's obviously working quite well because most people are falling for it. Because if they aren't falling for that, they're falling for then the negation of that. Well, in order to protect ourselves against that, because I don't agree with that, I just have to do the other thing. They're falling for this created dichotomy without any knowledge of self, without any knowledge of like what's actually being done, why these people are saying these things. Trump is not a Christian. Okay, let's make that very, very clear. He's not even a conservative. So for those concepts to come out of his influence is insane. The same thing could be said for people like Joe Rogan. He's not a Christian or a conservative, yet most of his following is suddenly jumping on this train about those things. It's an interesting thing to watch. I'm not just beating down Christian conservatism. Liberalism these days, like the Democrats and, the whole left, is the progressivism is, but that seems to be like even more obvious brainwashing. And maybe that's just because I grew up in Christian conservatism too. So maybe I need to speak on that a bit, because the push for women's rights, when we already had a civil rights movement for women, we already had feminism well established in this country, the push for trans rights, the push for children's rights to be adults, these sorts of concepts get extremely blurry, and that's the whole entire point of them being propagated and pushed the way that they are. It's all under the guise of human decency, of empathy, of progress for the individual, which are great concepts. They're just not, these things have nothing to do with that, truly. We already, talking about something and bringing representation into play is one thing. Pushing agendas is something else. And the liberals will be the first to swear that they're never pushing any agendas, but they are quite obviously the ones pushing agendas. We're like pushing subliminally and secretly and, underneath the surface, trying to act in that it's in the name of this or it's in the name of that. We're like, generally conservatives are pretty clear that like they don't give a shit about people. They're capitalists. There's these different lines that are kind of drawn that way. And again, this is all just part of the brainwashing. It's all just part of a giant illusion. But so now we have people that are like, you know what? I'm actually totally fine with us killing black people. And that's just okay now in 2024, to people being like, my son is a cat and people should treat him like a cat. And that's, otherwise we're not actually being progressive. And it's like, okay, so the world is completely fucked right now as far as this culture is concerned. People are not thinking People have completely shut off, and I'm pretty sure they've been shut off for a couple generations at least. They've been slowly getting shut off over time, right? That's the whole point of this country, to be clear. This country was established with a very specific purpose of brainwashing the masses and controlling the masses into submission, for the sake of a one world government, for the sake of essentially a one world government, which is not supposed to be some demonic term and devilish term. It just has become that for the fact that those pushing for it and controlling all of this are a very specific people, a very specific group of families that are seeking control and have been seeking control for a couple thousand years, more than that even, and found the ways to do it and have been enacting this system over time. Okay. And what's so weird is because, like, in Christianity, like, it'll talk, like, you know, they'll talk about how, like, Satan's been trying to get everybody to fall for his tricks for thousands of years, and now people are finally doing it when they see people, you know, getting surgery to validate their transsexuality and stuff like that. When, like, but they don't see that when it comes to people, like, beginning lynchings again. Like, it's a really weird thing that's going on. And I'm not trying to step on too many toes here. I'll probably step on all of them. I'm a bit clumsy. Also, I don't care. I'm just out here dancing myself, right? I'm not trying to offend people. I'm trying to bring out concepts that I hope can help people out of disillusionment and out of these false realities and sense of identities, and that can empower the people to their actual power, which is innate. The power of God is within every individual. We need to stop looking externally for it. But that's been the whole trick of Christianity all along, hasn't it? Because Jesus himself said, you're not supposed to follow men. And this isn't about the opinions of men, and this isn't about what a man can do, and this isn't about me being the sacrifice for your sins. This is about you picking up your cross and carrying it and becoming your own sacrifice for your own sins. You becoming self-actualized and being able to have an actual personal relationship with your highest power. Yet the only thing you're ever going to hear when you go in churches is people, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. We got to say the name of Jesus. You got to claim Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus and believe that Jesus is the propitiation for your sins, then you're going to hell, because Jesus said he is the only way. And they've just got it so fucked up. And it's been being taught this way on purpose to convince people of anything but their own power. Now, why would somebody do something like that? That's crazy. It's almost like you wouldn't want a populace, like, capable of controlling themselves. I mean, I would think that the only people that would have an interest like that are people that want to be in control themselves. Because I'll tell you, I get annoyed as fuck when people aren't in control of themselves. When, like, codependent behaviors run me up a fucking wall. I worked extremely hard to not be a codependent person, and to see it so prevalent in this society is like, this is why we're all so sick. This is why society is being constantly degraded. This is why we're able to be overtaken. It's because of this codependency, and people don't even see it because they're codependent. And I don't even fully blame people. I do, because if I can become self-actualized, anybody can. Anybody can, okay? But it does take work, and I have been doing this my entire life. And I have had the help, like, it's not just like I've done it by myself. Yes, it's self-actualization, but, like, it's taken every experience that I've ever had, every person that I've ever interacted with, every fiber of my being that is attached to the greater network of existence in order to come to a point of being able to just make my own decisions. And not have to, and I'm not, and the difference too is that, like, there's people that then will be independent. Independence isn't just self-actualization. They don't necessarily equate. You can be independent while still completely tied to the system. We have a political party of independence now, right? The Independent Party. There's the left, the right, the in-between, the balance between all of them, the negation of all of them, and all of those things have their own little box that you can fit inside of and a label that you can put on. And then you can be accepted by society that way. None of that all of that can be a process of independence to a degree, but none of that is actually the process of self-actualization, unless you can, for yourself, conjure for yourself your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your own system of being. Then you're not truly self-actualized. And it's not this great big thing that like it's made out to be either. I came up with this concept long ago when it came to the capacity to be able to separate oneself from one's own bias and ego, and to realize that I used to, when I first started, I was like, oh yeah, you got to kill the ego because the ego's bad. Well, when you're thinking that way, you're still giving into the binary. You're still giving into the dichotomy of good and evil, which is the thing we're supposed to be completely stepping away from. That's the thing we're supposed to be stepping away from. That's the thing that Christianity has actually brought into the world and continues to bring in the world. That this is demonic and this is evil and this is right and this is wrong and this is what's like. You can't have such definitive standards for a mass of individuals when those individuals are thinking for themselves and acting for themselves and behaving for themselves. That's why we don't want a self-actualized populace, right? We need everybody to be subdued into these boxes so that they can be controlled through what we have determined to be right and wrong. You think the Catholic Church isn't like one of the most powerful, groups in the world? Like the most powerful systems in the world. In the whole world. Like the Catholic Church rules everything. And all of these different religions all fall into some place underneath its control, and like to be given to these things is just wild. It's just wild to me, but it's what's easy and it's what's comfortable. And humans are given to comfort and ease. Humans long for convenience. Humans don't like to strive for greatness. They want it handed to them, which isn't how greatness works. And that's why, a figure like Jesus is so easily used to manipulate the masses and to brainwash everybody into giving up their power. Because, he was fully God and fully man, so like we can't exactly be like him. We'll never fully be perfect, but if we just rest in him and try to emulate him, then we're doing good enough. Then we're doing well. And good enough is good enough. And that's what's going to get us to heaven. And like all of these concepts are so out there, right? But somebody brings up how, like the comment that I brought up that got deleted. Okay, I'll talk about it. In Genesis 1, okay, the King James Version of the Bible, that's what I grew up with. That's what the churches that I grew up in were very adamant about teaching out of. This is the only truth. All of the other Bibles are fallacies. All of the other Bibles have demonic manipulations in order to take away from the truth. This is the one truth because it was properly canonized and properly translated from the original text into English. This specific book. Of course, when you're in church and you're being taught these things and you're being taught the history of these things, you're not going to go search for yourself the history of these things because you're already being taught that, right? You're already being taught these things. You don't need to, you can read it for yourself all day, but you're already being told what it says. So you're not going to come to these concepts by yourself unless you pull yourself out of those spaces. And you're not going to do that because only a sinner would do that. Only somebody in active sin would do that. If you are truly connected to God, you're going to want to be connected to the people of God, which are in a church. Jesus himself said that's not how it works. In fact, it's the opposite. Get out of these churches. Go connect with the actual reality of the world. Jesus spent most of his time with people that did not claim to be Christian, but he himself was considered, demonic for that, and was considered to be a witch because of all the things that he was doing in the name of God. Yet now Paul comes along and a Pharisee and gets everybody believing heretical concepts of Jesus and uses Jesus as this figure of power because he himself couldn't do it good enough, right? And now suddenly everybody just believes all of these things about Jesus that are literally the opposite of what he was teaching. And it's wild to me because I've seen this happen in my own life. Even those absolutely closest to me, those I was raised with, my own family, my own friends that I grew up with and stuff like that, believe the lies that have been told to them by my family or by my exes over the proof of what I've lived and what I speak and how I live what I speak, right? And that's because people don't want to see those things. People will actually see it and just be like, well, she's probably faking, or well, I don't know how she does that and how she did it so well and how she continues to do that, but it's probably the devil. It's probably witchcraft. And that's the best people have. And I've watched it happen so many times. And I recently even saw a friend that I hadn't seen for 10 years. And they mentioned that the reason that I don't look as aged as they look in the last 10 years is because of all the witchcraft. And I was like, witchcraft is stupid. The people that are like what you're referring to as witchcraft, like to make myself look younger, like if that's what you really think, like then you don't know me, and you're definitely never going to actually see me because you already have these insane preconceived notions of the power that I have and what I'm doing. I've just been taking care of myself. You haven't. That's the difference. It's not that complicated. You've been being consistently giving into the darkness of your soul. I chose the light. That's the difference. If you stay in a dark room every day, all day, and don't ever take care of yourself and only do the things that make you feel dark and nasty and dirty and that you think that's what power is, you're going to step into the light one day and one, it's going to fucking blind you. It's going to hurt you. You're not going to like it. And if a mirror's put in front of you in that bright light, you're not going to like what you see. Because you haven't looked at those things. You haven't spent time getting into your actual core and working through those things and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. You've been running and hiding in the darkness. Don't blame those in the light for your own darkness. But that's where we're at now because people aren't self-actualized. People have no capacity to even think for themselves or to even think about themselves truly. It's everybody else's fault that I'm lonely or that I'm unsuccessful or that I'm this or that. That's you, brother. That's all you. That's you not taking care of yourself, not being willing to do the work that you need to do to be the person that you could be. Finding excuses, making excuses. Quit making excuses and your life will change. I promise. Quit making excuses. That's the one. You let that guide you, your whole world will change. Suddenly you won't have any excuses to make and you'll actually just start doing the thing. You'll be very proud of yourself in the end. But nobody wants to do that. That's hard. That's hard. No, we're all looking for a savior. We've all been convinced that there's something outside of ourselves, somebody outside of ourselves that's going to make us happy. It's hitting the lottery. It's getting the right partner. It's finally having kids. It's getting that perfect job. It's, becoming rich, becoming famous, whatever it is. Those are all just illusions. Those are all just excuses that people like to use and that society validates because it keeps people easy to control as to excuses as to why we don't have to be self-actualized individuals. And that's why we live in the world that we live today. That's why everything is the way that it is. I don't look and question it. I'm not confused by the state of the world that we're in today. The other day I saw something that was like, what do they say? The man-made horrors beyond our comprehension, but they're not beyond my comprehension. I can completely comprehend why we are where we're at. I understand all those things. I take the time to. I'm not so busy trying to deflect reality and trying to run away from the reality of things that, just to convince myself that I'm okay. I'm okay with not being okay. I'm okay with being scared, with being alone, with being uncertain, with being, unsupported. with being in lack. And I've learned that through being put through those situations and not really having much of another choice other than to rise above it. But that's an interesting concept because most people don't choose that. When given the choice, people choose the easy thing. People want convenience. And then they wonder why the world is the way that it is. You know, for thousands of years, we had to walk and work just to get a drink of water, and it was barely clean. We had to walk and work just to go to the bathroom. We had to walk and work just to get something to eat. We had to walk and work to do anything. And nowadays, you can sit in a chair and have everything hand delivered to you. And I mean everything. Everything. Especially through your little handheld screens. And we wonder why we feel the ways that we feel. But we're not going to do the work to actually figure out why we feel those ways. We just like to wonder. We just like to wonder. And that's why we're given to things like Christianity, especially conservative Christianity, right? Because it takes all of the work out of wondering and leaves us with just that fascination of, well, it's just this thing we don't fully understand. We got to take it in faith, right? It's a delusion is what it is. And it's been passed down through generations, and it's being force-fed through media. And now you have people like Russell Brand pushing it and people believing it. If you don't think that that guy is actively trolling the Christian community, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, but you are. You really, really are. You're so dense. Please wake up. Please wake up. That's crazy. He's literally just trying to get people to kill themselves in the name of Jesus. It's a joke. It's a joke that's being played on people. The same thing with Trump. If you literally think that Trump cares about anybody but Trump, literally him as his own person and him just making a name for himself in history, if you think he cares about anything else, please wake up. Please do your own work. Please just do a little work. Just do a little work. Quit being so lazy. Quit just sucking in all of the toxicity constantly being fed to you. Watch something else. Do something else. Listen to somebody else. Go touch grass. Goodness gracious. Because what a wild world. I mean, the same thing for any of the politicians, truly. But it's easier to note with the other politicians. I really believe that. It's crazy to me these deep logical concepts people have come up with as to why it's totally acceptable to support somebody like Trump. It's insane. It's insanity. It's utter insanity. It's ridiculous. Again, okay. I keep, there's so much on my head about this stuff. Genesis 1, okay? I was raised with the Bible. Genesis 1 in the King James Version of the Bible. Canonized by King James. Okay, I need to get into this. I'm sorry. I would like to get into it deeper, but first I need to explain the history. The King James Version of the Bible was a canonized version of the scriptures that was handpicked and selected by King James and the leaders underneath him, the spiritual leaders underneath him, handpicked to be translated into English so that his priests could teach it to the peasants, to the people, to the masses, who at the time did not have the capacity themselves to read. They didn't have access to Bibles themselves, so they had to go to churches in order to be taught these things. That was the reason these churches even existed, to be clear, was because people could not read for themselves. The second you can read for yourself and can engage with the Holy Spirit yourself and can have a relationship with your highest power yourself, why the fuck are you going to a church? I don't get it. I don't get it. I understand that people need those crutches for a time. Okay. But be very cautious that you're not just being misled by other people's opinions, and just because they're long set opinions, just because they're opinions that have been adapted over a long period of time, and just because you're too unwilling to actually do the work yourself to consider these things, to pray about these things, to meditate on these things. Because I still practice prayer and meditation. I just don't do it the way that they do it at church. I don't go to church. I don't, I'll still read the Bible. I still, but I don't strictly read the Bible. I don't, and I'll read, I'll read anything and be able to take something good out of it because I have good in my heart that is able to propagate those things. If you don't have good in your heart, you're always going to find evil in everything. You know how many people use the Bible just to find evil? Like the Bible's filled with evil, and it's just ways that you can find evil in the world and that you can damn everything. And that's good Christianity. Okay. That's why the King James Version was made. Because King James had his own belief system and he wanted the peasants to also abide by his belief system. And the King James Version is renowned for speaking on, how slaves should respond to their slave masters, how people should respond to their kings, how it's based on the submission of one's soul to a higher power. Okay, I don't have to submit to my higher power. I do in humility, but I come into alignment with my highest power. I receive my highest power. I don't cower before it. So the King James Version of the Bible is very specific for a very specific type of brainwashing. That's what it was made for. That's what it was actually made for. And that's why it's propagated the way it is in churches and why it is taught the way it is in those churches to be the way it is. People fall for it the way that they have forever because it's a very strong book that way. And the thing is that even the Freemasons will use it, only they'll use it with a square and a compass because they were in part the ones that helped create it and know the purpose of what it's being used for, and the way that they read it is practically in the reverse. They actually understand it better than any person going to church and hearing it will. And that's the point too, because unless you've done certain types of work and then put yourself in in those brotherhoods, they're based off of blackmailing each other in order to get that knowledge. This knowledge is accessible to the individual through themselves, but if you are so separated from your power that you don't know that, can't recognize that, or aren't willing to do the work, or feel disempowered to do the work, then you are going to be given to these different systems that offer power in exchange for the education. And that's what's happening across the board. And the way that those things work is it's all just a control tactic. It's all just to keep people under control. That's what it is. Because if you have sex with an animal, or you have sex with somebody of the same sex, or you have sex with somebody underage, and it's secretly videotaped, now you're blackmailed for life. Because while you're trying to become a high spiritual leader or a high prevalent, powerful leader in your community, the last thing that you want is that type of information getting out. So at that point, now you'll do anything in order to maintain this power. And they'll keep giving you the power, but only under the stipulations that you're still following these standards, that you're still giving your power. It's not your power that you're being given, right? They're giving you little tiny pieces of your power, and you're claiming that as the ultimate power and giving the rest of your power away for those tiny little standards that only work within these false systems that they have created over time, to be clear. Okay? So that's the point of the King James Version of the Bible. That's what I was raised with. In the King James Version of the Bible, in Genesis 1, it says that it refers to God in the plural. It refers to God as they. It says, and God spoke amongst themselves and decided to create man and said, let us make man in our image. Let us make man in our image. Male and female, they created them. So God was represented, God, Elohim, was represented by a duality, which is represented in the male and the female humans. However, I mean, I don't believe, it doesn't say, but like, you know, it references different parts of God, but like, I don't believe that God had a penis and a vagina. I don't think that it was like that. It was, those things are, we are physical representations of a much deeper, greater, more profound existence. We're an experience of that existence. We ourselves, in the physical and in the tangible and in this third dimension, are a metaphor for the fifth dimension, for the greater dimensions, for a greater reality beyond just what is tangible. And that was what was being spoken of at that time. Humans were innately connected to the rest of the planet and to themselves, and were meant to not control, but to care for the rest of the planet. That was their one job. They were put as their own creation, as their own creators on this planet in order to be part of the planet in order. And all of it at one time was good. Now this is before, you know, well, so then Genesis 2 happens, right? And immediately God stops being referenced as Elohim. God begins to be referenced as Yahweh, Lord, Master. And Yahweh creates Adam and Eve and puts them in the garden. And he walks with them every day. And he tells them to be fruitful and multiply. And he's happy with them in the garden. For hundreds of years, they didn't get kicked out of the garden until they were in their 300s. To be clear, according to the Bible. They were told that they could enjoy anything. Anything. They could enjoy anything with each other. They could enjoy anything on the earth. They can enjoy the fruits of anything on the earth outside of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because if they ate of that fruit, they would die. There's a whole lot of different things that go into that. But mostly the concept that I have off of that, and again, these are just my opinions, I'm not a pastor, but the fruit of the tree of the knowledge and good of the knowledge of good and evil is the consequences of the action of conceiving good and evil. When you take out that dichotomy, when you stop believing that there is an innate good and an innate evil, that everything is actually relative to the individual, you're forced to actually have a relationship with your higher power in order to engage what is right for you and what is wrong for you. Because you can't just look at everybody else and see what everybody else is doing and then say, okay, well, as long as I'm doing what everybody else is doing and just following the herd, I'm good. No, you actually have to have a personal relationship with God. You actually have to be self-actualized. But the second that you are able to determine this is definitively right, this is definitively wrong, and it's supposed to apply to all things, you have separated yourself from God. Not only that, but you have brought death upon everything for the fact that now what? Now it's good in comparison to what's evil. It's evil in comparison to what's good. Everything now has this dichotomy in place in which evil exists. You have created evil. You have substantiated it. And now you continue, and like in that, you continue to cycle through this concept of evil. Prior to us conceiving and wanting to conceive of evil, wanting to understand it, wanting to take that into ourselves, everything was good. everything was good. It was the evil that we were like, but what is that other thing though? It just created this sense of self-doubt in us to begin with, right? And we had to give in to that doubt. And when you give in to that doubt and when you give in to that fear, you do create death. There's no life in that. All that there is now I feel ashamed because I suddenly realize that I'm naked. I suddenly realize that I am vulnerable. I suddenly realize that I did something I wasn't supposed to do. And now there's consequences for that. There never even used to be consequences for shit because everything was good. It wasn't looked at in that light. The light was shown the day that we decided that we wanted to know what evil was, that we wanted to conceive of evil. And we do it in our own personal lives all the time. And we have the capacity to, in our own personal lives, remove ourselves from those things. But it takes being self-actualized. It takes separating ourselves from the herd. It takes committing ourselves to our highest power, not just these beliefs that have been taught to us, not just these concepts that have been taught to us. It takes actually doing that work. Removing ourselves from a sense of guilt, removing ourselves from a sense of death, from a sense of immorality, but that's the opposite of what the Christian church does. The Christian church is the first to say that's immoral, and this is immoral, and this is immoral, and this is immoral. That's where it comes from. And that's where I don't believe that the story of Adam and Eve, which is, by the way, a pagan story that well outdates the Bible. It's a story that's existed for a long time in many different cultures, and it takes on a lot of different forms, but essentially that's the same concept, is that, we ultimately are the ones responsible for bringing ourselves back to our own sense of paradise because we have removed ourselves from that by living in fear, by being given to greed, by being given to, wanting to be in power of everything, of knowing everything, even the bad, when everything was good prior to that. I have to pee and my phone's about to die, so I'm gonna stop this. This will just be part 1, and I will continue at another point. I know this is a weird place to stop, but this is gonna be a long series, so bear with me. Hopefully I've expressed these things thoroughly thus far, and I shall see you at another time.